Marcus Thompson pulled his baseball cap low and entered the store, which had no cashier, no security guard, not even a manager standing at the counter. He had come to observe quietly, but what he heard made his blood run cold. Desperate sobs came from the employee restroom. "Please, I can't lose my insurance. My daughter needs this surgery." A shiny silver name tag lay on the wet tile beneath the door. Maria Santos, cleaning crew. The cry wasn't just sad, it was the cry of someone about to lose everything. Marcus paused. 3 months ago, the branch had reported flawlessly. Perfect employee satisfaction, no complaints. But the truth was bleeding right through that door. And the burning question flared in his mind. If there was tragedy like this hiding here, then what was he missing out on across the corporation? What Marcus did was force him to confront the true cost of turning a blind eye. The restroom door opened, and a middle-aged Latina woman emerged, quickly wiping her eyes with a paper towel. Her name tag read, Emma Reyes, Maintenance. Her hands trembled as she tried to compose herself, but the tears kept coming. Jonathan watched as she checked her phone, and her face crumpled again. Whatever she'd seen there had broken something inside her. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Jonathan asked softly, approaching with the careful concern of a stranger. Emma looked up, startled. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "I'm fine. Just having a rough day." Her accent carried the weight of someone who'd learned English as an adult, every word carefully chosen. "Sometimes rough days need someone to listen," Jonathan said, his voice gentle but persistent. "I'm Jonathan. I was just shopping, but you look like you could use a friend." Emma glanced around nervously, as if checking for surveillance. "I shouldn't if my manager sees me talking to customers about personal stuff." She trailed off, but something in Jonathan's eyes made her continue. "My daughter Sophia, she's only 8. She has a heart condition, and the surgery. I can't afford to lose my insurance, but they keep cutting my hours. This week I'm down to 22 hours. Next week might be worse." Jonathan felt a familiar anger building in his chest, but he kept his expression neutral. "Who decides your hours?" "Mr. Collins. Derek Collins. He's the area manager." Emma's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "He says it's about efficiency, but I see the schedule. The new girl, Ashley, she got 35 hours this week, and she's only been here 2 months. I've been here 3 years. The pieces were already forming a picture in Jonathan's mind, but he needed to see it for himself. "Emma, is there somewhere we could talk? Maybe during your break?" She shook her head quickly. "Mr. Collins doesn't like us taking long breaks, and he definitely doesn't like us talking to customers about problems." The fear in her voice was unmistakable. Jonathan reached into his wallet and pulled out a $20 bill. "Then let me buy something from you." Customer service, right? "Maybe you could show me where to find the best deals while we walk around?" For the first time, Emma almost smiled. "You're very kind, Mr. Just Jonathan. And Emma, whatever's happening here, it's not right. Sometimes the right person just needs to see what's really going on." As Emma led him through the store, pointing out sale items with mechanical efficiency, Jonathan began to see the retail world through her eyes. The cameras that seemed to follow certain employees more than others. The way some workers moved with confidence while others, particularly the Latino and Black employees, seemed to walk on eggshells. And then he saw Derek Collins. Derek was everything Jonathan had expected, and worse. A tall, pale man in his early 40s with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. He stood near the customer service counter, clipboard in hand, watching his domain with the satisfaction of someone who believed he held absolute power over the lives of others. Jonathan observed as Derek approached a young Black employee named Marcus, who was restocking shelves. "Marcus, I need to see you in my office in 5 minutes," Derek announced, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. We need to discuss your performance metrics. The humiliation was intentional and public. Marcus's shoulders sagged, and Jonathan watched as other employees pretended not to notice, their own fear palpable. This wasn't management. This was psychological warfare. "Mr. Collins runs a tight ship," Emma whispered to Jonathan, her voice carefully neutral, but her eyes told a different story. Jonathan decided it was time to get closer. He approached Derek with the casual confidence of a regular customer. "Excuse me, are you the manager here? I wanted to compliment you on your staff. That lady over there," he nodded toward Emma, "was incredibly helpful." Derek's smile was practiced but cold. "Well, we do train our people to be helpful, though I have to say, some are more dedicated than others." His eyes flicked toward Emma with barely concealed disdain. "Dedicated how?" Jonathan asked, his tone innocent but probing. Derek's expression shifted slightly, as if he was trying to read Jonathan's intentions. "Well, some employees understand that retail is about efficiency and profit margins. Others seem to think this is some kind of social program." The words were carefully chosen, designed to sound reasonable to a customer while carrying a deeper, uglier meaning. Jonathan felt his jaw tighten but maintained his casual demeanor. "Interesting perspective. I've always thought good employees were a company's greatest asset." "Sure, good employees, but you have to separate the wheat from the chaff, if you know what I mean." Derek's voice carried a subtle emphasis that made his meaning unmistakable. "Some people just don't have the work ethic for retail. Others are natural fits." As if on cue, Ashley, the blonde employee Emma had mentioned, approached Derek with a question about returns. Derek's entire demeanor changed, his voice became warmer, more patient, almost fatherly. "Of course, Ashley. Let me show you the proper procedure. It's important that our best people know all the systems." The contrast was stark and deliberate. Jonathan watched as Derek spent 10 minutes walking Ashley through a simple return process he could have explained in 2, while Marcus stood waiting by the customer service counter, the humiliation of being summoned and then ignored playing out in real time. Jonathan pulled out his phone and began discreetly documenting what he was seeing. Hours cut along racial lines. Public humiliation disguised as management. A systematic pattern of abuse that had been hiding in plain sight within his own company. He texted his legal team a single message. "Need full audit of Youngstown location. Priority 1. Derek returned to his position of power, and Jonathan seized the moment. "You seem to really care about getting the best from your team. How do you decide things like scheduling and performance reviews?" Derek's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why do you ask? You thinking about applying?" The question was loaded with assumption and contempt. "Just curious about effective management. I work in business myself." Jonathan kept his answer vague but truthful. "Well, it's about reading people," Derek said, his confidence growing as he assumed he was speaking to someone who shared his worldview. "Some people you can invest in them, train them, give them opportunities. Others, well, you have to manage them differently. Set clear boundaries. Sometimes you have to be firm to maintain standards." "Firm how?" Derek's smile became predatory. "Oh, you know. Make sure they understand that work is work. Can't let them get too comfortable or they start thinking they're entitled to things they haven't earned. Some people, especially certain types, they need structure, clear expectations, consequences." The mask was slipping, and Jonathan could see the ugly truth beneath Derek's professional veneer. This man didn't just run a retail store. He ran a system designed to keep certain people down while elevating others based on nothing more than the color of their skin. "Certain types?" Jonathan's voice remained level, but there was steel underneath. Derek caught himself, realizing he might have said too much. "I just mean different personality types, Some people are natural leaders, others are followers. You have to manage accordingly. The backpedal was smooth but unconvincing. Jonathan nodded as if he understood, but inside his anger was building toward something dangerous. This wasn't just about Emma or Marcus, or even this one store. This was about a cancer that had grown within his company, metastasizing in the shadows while he'd been focused on quarterly reports and board meetings. He needed more evidence, more documentation. Most importantly, he needed to see just how deep this rabbit hole went. Derek Collins wasn't operating in a vacuum. Corruption like this required a network, a system of enablers and accomplices. "Well, I appreciate your insights," Jonathan said, extending his hand to Derek. "I'm sure we'll be talking again soon." Derek shook his hand with the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. Always happy to talk shop with someone who understands business. As Jonathan walked away, he caught Emma's eye across the store. She was watching him with a mixture of hope and fear, as if she could sense that something significant was about to change, but wasn't sure whether it would be for better or worse. Over the next several hours, Jonathan systematically documented Derek's empire of discrimination. He watched as Derek consistently gave white employees the best schedules, the most hours, and the prime holiday shifts that came with overtime pay. Meanwhile, employees of color were relegated to part-time schedules that kept them just below the threshold for benefits eligibility. Jonathan observed Derek's interactions with customers, noting how he immediately assisted white customers while Black and Latino customers waited longer and received more perfunctory service. When an elderly Black man tried to return an item that was technically past the return window, Derek publicly denied the return while citing company policy. Jonathan knew that policy by heart. He'd written much of it himself, and managers had clear discretion to make exceptions for customer satisfaction. But it was the employee scheduling board that provided the most damning evidence. Posted prominently in the break room, the schedule revealed a pattern so blatant it would have been comical if it weren't destroying lives. Emma Reyes, 22 hours. Marcus Johnson, 18 hours. Maria Santos, 20 hours. Meanwhile, Ashley Mitchell clocked in at 38 hours, Brad Thompson at 40, and Jennifer Walsh at 35. The racial divide was absolute and undeniable. Jonathan photographed everything, building a case that would not only destroy Derek professionally, but potentially land him in federal prison for civil rights violations. Each image was another nail in the coffin of Derek's career, and Jonathan felt a grim satisfaction knowing that justice was finally coming for the people Derek had systematically oppressed. As the afternoon wore on, Jonathan received regular updates from his legal team. "Audit team mobilizing," read one message. "Preliminary investigation suggests violations of Title VII, EECC guidelines, and potentially federal civil rights statutes. Recommend immediate intervention." But Jonathan was finding it increasingly difficult to maintain his composure. Every interaction he witnessed, every casual cruelty Derek inflicted, felt like a personal betrayal of everything he'd built Blake and company to represent. This wasn't just one bad manager. This was a window into systemic failures that demanded immediate and decisive action. Near the electronics section, he overheard Derek on a phone call with what sounded like another manager. "Yeah, I'm cutting Maria's hours down to 15 next week," Derek said, his voice carrying the casual cruelty of someone discussing the weather. "She's been asking too many questions about the health plan." People like her need to understand their place. Can't let them get too comfortable. The "people like her" phrase hit Jonathan like a physical blow. This wasn't just workplace bullying. This was systematic oppression based on race and ethnicity happening under his company's name and logo. He moved closer to the employee break room, where he noticed a bulletin board covered with various company announcements. Among the standard safety notices and corporate updates was a handwritten note from Derek. "Reminder: all schedule requests must be approved by management." Employees who cannot work assigned shifts without complaint may find their hours adjusted accordingly. The threat was clear and targeted. Employees who spoke up about scheduling injustices would face retaliation in the form of reduced hours. It was a perfect system for maintaining silence and compliance among the most vulnerable workers. Jonathan photographed the bulletin board, making sure to capture Derek's signature on the threatening memo. Each piece of evidence was another step toward Derek's inevitable downfall, but Jonathan was struggling with the knowledge that this abuse had been happening for months, possibly years, while he'd remained oblivious in his corporate tower. As he documented the systematic discrimination, Jonathan's phone buzzed with messages from his executive team. His head of security confirmed that local law enforcement was standing by for potential civil rights violations. His legal director reported that the initial audit had uncovered extensive patterns of discriminatory behavior consistent with federal civil rights violations. But it was Derek's final act of cruelty that pushed Jonathan past his breaking point and set the stage for the confrontation that would change everything. Derek approached Emma as she was restocking cleaning supplies near the customer service area. "Emma, I need to see you in my office," Derek announced, his voice carrying across the store like a public execution. "We need to talk about your attitude and your future with this company." Jonathan followed at a distance as Derek led Emma to his small office behind the customer service counter. Through the glass partition, he could see Derek's aggressive body language as he positioned himself to tower over Emma's seated form. The power dynamic was deliberate and cruel, a manager using his authority to psychologically terrorize an employee whose only crime was asking for enough hours to keep her sick daughter insured. Jonathan positioned himself where he could hear every word of the conversation that was about to unfold. What he heard would haunt him and fuel his determination to ensure that Derek Collins never had the opportunity to destroy another employee's life. "Emma, we need to have a serious conversation about your performance and your expectations," Derek began, his voice carrying the false concern of a predator preparing to strike. "I've been getting feedback about your work, and frankly, I'm concerned about whether you're the right fit for this company." Emma's voice was barely audible, but Jonathan caught every trembling word. "Mr. Collins, if this is about my schedule request, I can explain. My daughter needs surgery, and I just need enough hours to keep my insurance. I'm willing to work any shifts you need." Derek's laugh was cold and calculated, designed to strip away whatever dignity Emma had left. "Emma, this isn't about your personal situation. This is about business. And the business reality is that some employees justify their paychecks and others don't. You've been with us for 3 years, but I'm not seeing the growth and initiative that we need from our team members." "But my performance reviews have been excellent," Emma protested, her voice growing stronger with desperation. "My customer satisfaction scores are the highest in maintenance. I've never missed a shift. I've trained 4 new employees. What specific performance issues are you talking about?" Derek leaned back in his chair, savoring the moment of psychological torture. "Emma, it's not always about the numbers. It's about attitude, about fitting in with the team culture, about understanding your role in the bigger picture. Some employees naturally understand what it takes to succeed here. Others seem to struggle with basic concepts like teamwork and company loyalty." The coded language was unmistakable. Derek was describing Emma's failure to accept discrimination quietly as a character flaw, turning her requests for fair treatment into evidence of disloyalty and poor attitude. "I am loyal to this company," Emma said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I've given 3 years of my life to this job. I work weekends, holidays, whatever you need. I stay late when you're short-staffed. I cover for other people when they call in sick. I don't understand what more I can do to prove my commitment." Derek's response revealed the true ugliness of his worldview. "Emma, commitment isn't about showing up. Commitment is about understanding your place in the organization and being grateful for the opportunities you're given. Some people are natural leaders who deserve advancement and recognition. Others need to focus on doing their jobs without constantly asking for more. The racial subtext was becoming more explicit with each exchange. Derek was essentially telling Emma that her race and ethnicity predetermined her ceiling within the company, regardless of her performance or dedication. Mr. Collins, I'm not asking for advancement. I'm not asking for recognition. I'm asking for enough hours to keep the health insurance that might save my daughter's life. Sophia is 8 years old. She was born with a congenital heart defect. Without surgery, the doctors say she might not live to see her 10th birthday. Emma's voice broke completely as she laid her family's most desperate need before the man who held their fate in his hands. Please, I'm begging you. Just give me the hours I need to keep my insurance. I'll do anything. Extra cleaning, overnight shifts, whatever it takes. Derek's response was a masterclass in corporate cruelty wrapped in the language of business efficiency. Emma, I understand that you have personal challenges. We all do. But I can't make scheduling decisions based on individual employee situations. If I gave extra hours to every employee who had family problems, this store would be out of business in a month. He stood up and walked around his desk, positioning himself directly in front of Emma in a clear intimidation tactic. What I need from you is a commitment to doing your job without bringing personal drama into the workplace. If you can't handle your current schedule without constantly complaining and making demands, then maybe retail isn't the right career path for you. The threat was explicit now. Derek was telling Emma that any further requests for fair treatment would result in her termination. He was using her daughter's life as leverage to ensure her silent compliance with his discriminatory system. But Ashley gets 40 hours a week, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. She's been here 2 months. Her customer service scores are lower than mine. She's called in sick 3 times this month. She spends half her shift texting on her phone. How is she more deserving of full-time hours than I am? Derek's mask slipped completely, revealing the ugly truth beneath his professional veneer. Ashley shows initiative and leadership potential. She asks the right questions, demonstrates company values, and fits well with our team culture. Some people are just natural fits for our organization, Emma. Others need more time to develop the skills and attitudes we're looking for. The euphemisms were transparent covers for racial preference. Ashley was white, young, and blonde. Emma was Latina, middle-aged, and the single mother of a sick child. To Derek, those demographics told him everything he needed to know about their relative value to the company. What skills do I need to develop? Emma asked, her desperation giving way to a spark of anger. What attitudes need to change? I've done everything you've asked for 3 years. I've exceeded every performance metric. I've sacrificed time with my family to cover shifts for this company. Tell me specifically what I need to do to earn the right to work enough hours to keep my child alive. Derek's response was the final straw that would trigger his downfall. Emma, the fact that you're sitting here arguing with me instead of accepting feedback gracefully tells me everything I need to know about your attitude. Some employees understand that management makes decisions for the good of the business. Others think they can negotiate and demand special treatment because of their personal circumstances. He paused, letting the cruelty of his words sink in before delivering the killing blow. If you continue to bring this kind of negative energy to your work, I'll have no choice but to look for someone who can handle the responsibilities of this position without constant drama. There are plenty of people who would be grateful for any hours at all. Jonathan had heard enough. Derek had just threatened to fire a model employee because she had the audacity to ask for enough hours to save her daughter's life. The systematic cruelty had crossed every line of human decency, and Jonathan knew that the time for observation had ended. He walked directly to the office door and knocked firmly. Derek looked up, irritated at the interruption. "Excuse me," Jonathan said, his voice carefully controlled. I'm looking for the store manager. I have some concerns about customer service I'd like to discuss. Derek's irritation immediately transformed into his professional mask. I'm Derek Collins, the area manager. Emma, we'll continue this conversation later. Take a few minutes to think about what we've discussed. Emma stood up on shaking legs, her face streaked with tears she could no longer hide. As she passed Jonathan in the doorway, their eyes met for just a moment. In that instant, Jonathan saw not just Emma's pain, but the accumulated suffering of every employee who'd been systematically broken down by Derek's regime of discrimination. "What can I help you with?" Derek asked, his tone shifting to the oily friendliness he reserved for customers he assumed shared his worldview. Jonathan stepped into the office and closed the door behind him. The small space suddenly felt charged with tension as two very different philosophies of leadership prepared to collide. "Actually, Derek, I think it's time we had a very different conversation," Jonathan said, his voice dropping to a level that carried unmistakable authority. Something in Jonathan's tone made Derek's confident smile falter slightly. "I'm sorry. I don't understand. You said you had customer service concerns?" "Oh, I do," Jonathan said, his voice becoming harder with each word. "I have very serious concerns about the kind of service certain customers and employees receive in this store. The kind of service that destroys lives and careers based on nothing more than the color of someone's skin." Derek's face went pale as the implications of Jonathan's words began to sink in. "Sir, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Derek. I heard every word of what you just said to Emma, every threat, every humiliation, every coded piece of discrimination. I've been watching you operate for the past 4 hours, and what I've seen is a systematic pattern of abuse that would make a civil rights lawyer weep with joy." Derek's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his brain struggling to process what was happening. The confident manager who'd been terrorizing employees just moments before was rapidly transforming into a panicked man who sensed his world crumbling around him. Who are you?" Derek managed to stammer. Jonathan pulled out his phone and showed Derek the screen, which displayed his contact information. At the top, in clear letters, it read, "Jonathan Blake, Chief Executive Officer, Blake & Company. Corporate Headquarters." The color drained completely from Derek's face as the magnitude of his situation became crystal clear. He'd been caught red-handed engaging in systematic discrimination by the one person in the company with the power to destroy him completely. "Mr. Blake," Derek stammered, his voice cracking with panic. "I can explain." "This is all a misunderstanding. Emma has been a performance problem, and I was just trying to maintain standards." "Stop!" Jonathan's voice cut through Derek's desperate backpedaling like a blade. "Don't insult my intelligence by trying to spin what I just witnessed. I heard you tell a 3-year employee with perfect attendance and the highest customer satisfaction scores that she doesn't deserve enough hours to maintain health insurance for her sick child. I watched you give preferential treatment to white employees while systematically undermining and humiliating employees of color." Derek's professional mask was completely gone now, replaced by the raw panic of a man watching his career and freedom evaporate in real time. "Sir, you have to understand. Managing a retail location requires difficult decisions. Sometimes you have to be firm with certain employees to maintain standards." "Derek?" Jonathan's voice was deadly quiet now. "In the next 60 seconds, my legal team, my head of human resources, and my security director are going to walk through that door. They have documentation of every discriminatory scheduling decision you've made over the past 18 months. They have recordings of your conversations. They have testimony from employees you've systematically abused." Derek's legs gave out, and he collapsed back into his chair. The man who'd strutted through the store like a tyrant was now a broken figure facing the complete destruction of his life. "Please, Mr. Blake, I have a family. I have a mortgage." This job is everything to me." Jonathan felt no sympathy for the man who'd shown no mercy to Emma or any of the other employees whose lives he'd casually destroyed. "You should have thought about that before you decided to turn my company into your personal kingdom of discrimination." The office door opened right on schedule, and Jonathan's executive team began filing in. His legal director, his head of human resources, his security chief, and 2 local police officers entered the small space, transforming it from Derek's sanctuary of power into his courtroom of judgment. "Derek Collins," the legal director announced with the formality of a court proceeding, "you're being terminated immediately for violation of civil rights laws, workplace harassment, and systematic discrimination. You have 5 minutes to collect your personal belongings under security escort before being permanently removed from all Blake & Company properties." Derek looked around the room desperately, searching for any sympathy or understanding. He found none. These weren't just corporate executives. They were the architects of his complete and total destruction. "This isn't over," Derek said, his voice shaking with impotent rage and growing desperation. "I'll fight this. I'll sue for wrongful termination. You can't destroy someone's career over misunderstandings and political correctness." Jonathan stepped closer to Derek, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority and moral certainty. "Derek, this isn't about political correctness. This is about justice. You systematically discriminated against employees based on race and ethnicity. You denied a mother the hours she needed to maintain health insurance for her sick child. You created a hostile work environment that violated every principle this company was built on." He paused, letting the weight of Derek's crimes settle in the room like a physical presence. "You're not just fired, Derek. You're going to face criminal charges for civil rights violations. You're going to be sued personally by every employee you discriminated against. And when this story goes public, you're going to become a case study in everything wrong with workplace discrimination." The police officers stepped forward with the practiced efficiency of law enforcement professionals. "Mr. Collins, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding potential civil rights violations and workplace harassment." As Derek was led away in handcuffs, his empire of discrimination crumbling around him like a house built on sand, Jonathan walked back onto the store floor to find Emma. She was standing by the customer service counter, surrounded by other employees who'd watched their tormentor's spectacular downfall with a mixture of shock and relief. The transformation in the store's atmosphere was immediate and palpable. Employees who'd spent years walking on eggshells were standing straighter, speaking louder, and looking each other in the eye for the first time in memory. The oppressive weight of Derek's discriminatory regime had been lifted, and the relief was visible on every face. "Emma," Jonathan said gently, approaching her with the respect she'd been denied for years, "could I speak with you for a moment?" She nodded, still in shock from the rapid transformation of her reality. The woman who'd been crying in the bathroom just hours earlier was now witnessing the complete vindication of everything she'd endured. "Mr. Blake, I didn't know... I had no idea you were..." "Emma, you have nothing to apologize for. You've been subjected to systematic discrimination and harassment, and that ends today, right now." Jonathan's voice carried the weight of absolute commitment. "Your hours are being restored to full-time immediately. Your health insurance will continue without interruption, and Blake & Company is personally covering any medical expenses for Sophia's surgery." Emma's knees buckled, and she had to steady herself against the counter as the magnitude of Jonathan's words hit her. The nightmare that had consumed her life for months was over, and her daughter's future was secure. "I don't understand." "Why are you doing this?" Jonathan looked around the store, at all the employees who'd suffered under Derek's regime, at the customers who'd been discriminated against, at the toxic culture that had grown like a cancer within his company. "Because this is what Blake & Company is supposed to be," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the store. A place where hard work is rewarded regardless of background, where every employee is treated with dignity and respect, where no one has to choose between their job and their family's health. He turned to address the entire store, his voice rising with passion and commitment. What happened here under Derek Collins was not just wrong, it was evil. It was a betrayal of everything this company stands for and everything America is supposed to represent. But today, that changes. Today, we remember that justice isn't just an ideal, it's a choice we make every single day. The applause started slowly, with one employee clapping tentatively, then building as others joined in. Soon, the entire store was erupting in cheers and applause, years of suppressed frustration and pain giving way to joy and hope. For the first time in anyone's memory, the Youngstown Blake and Company felt like a place where people actually wanted to work. Jonathan raised his hand for quiet, and the store fell silent with the respect due to someone who'd just delivered justice after years of oppression. I want everyone here to know that what happened under Derek Collins will never happen again. We're implementing new policies, new oversight, and new protections to ensure that every employee is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. He paused, making eye contact with employees throughout the store. If anyone has experienced discrimination or harassment, I want you to know that you can report it without fear of retaliation. Your jobs are secure, your concerns will be heard, and justice will be swift and decisive. Marcus, the young black employee who'd been publicly humiliated by Derek, stepped forward from the crowd. Mr. Blake, thank you for believing in us. Thank you for seeing what was really happening here. Jonathan shook Marcus's hand firmly. Marcus, you shouldn't have to thank me for treating you with basic human dignity. That should be the minimum expectation, not a special favor. Over the following weeks and months, the transformation of the Youngstown Blake and Company became a symbol that rippled through the entire retail industry. Derek Collins was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for civil rights violations, his conviction becoming a landmark case in employment law that was cited in training programs across corporate America. The employees Derek had discriminated against received substantial financial settlements, but more importantly, they received something that had been denied to them for years: respect, opportunity, and the chance to build careers based on merit rather than skin color. Emma was promoted to assistant manager within 6 months, her insights into employee relations proving invaluable in creating policies that protected vulnerable workers. Her experience under Derek's regime gave her a unique perspective on how discrimination operates in the workplace, and her recommendations helped Blake and Company develop industry-leading anti-discrimination practices. Sophia's surgery was successful, and she grew up knowing that sometimes justice does prevail. Sometimes the powerful do listen to the powerless. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't just morally correct, it's strategically brilliant. Jonathan Blake's undercover visit to Youngstown became more than just a story of corporate justice. It became a blueprint for how leaders can create systemic change when they're willing to see the truth, act on their convictions, and use their power to protect rather than exploit. The story spread through social media, news outlets, and corporate boardrooms across America. Justice in Youngstown became a rallying cry for workers' rights, while Derek's name became synonymous with everything wrong with workplace discrimination. Business schools began teaching case studies based on Jonathan's response to the crisis, using it as an example of moral leadership in action. But for Emma Reyes and her daughter Sophia, it was simply the day their lives changed forever. The day they learned that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is also the most compassionate. The day they discovered that speaking truth to power, even when it seems hopeless, can sometimes change everything. Jonathan Blake returned to his corporate headquarters with a renewed understanding of his responsibility as a leader. He'd seen firsthand how quickly discrimination could metastasize within his own company, but he'd also seen how quickly it could be eradicated when leadership acted with courage and conviction. The Youngstown incident became the catalyst for a comprehensive review of every Blake & Company location nationwide. Jonathan instituted anonymous reporting systems backed by independent investigators, regular executive visits to store locations where leadership interacted directly with frontline employees, and mandatory bias training for all management personnel. But most importantly, he created a culture where employee dignity was non-negotiable and discrimination was met with immediate and severe consequences. Derek Collins had thought he was untouchable, protected by distance from corporate oversight and a system that had historically overlooked his kind of abuse. He was wrong. Justice had been watching, waiting, and when the moment came, it struck with the precision of a surgeon and the force of a hurricane. The lesson was clear. In Jonathan Blake's America, discrimination wasn't just wrong, it was extinct. And any manager who thought otherwise would learn, as Derek had learned, that some battles are lost before they're even begun, especially when you're fighting against justice itself. The reverberations of the Youngstown incident continued long after Derek's conviction and imprisonment. Other Blake & Company locations began reporting their own instances of discrimination, emboldened by the knowledge that corporate leadership would take swift action against abusive managers. The company's stock price initially dipped due to the negative publicity and legal costs, but ultimately rose to record highs as investors recognized the value of a company that prioritized ethical leadership and employee welfare. Competitors in the retail industry scrambled to implement their own anti-discrimination policies, fearful that they might harbor their own Derek Collins, who could become the subject of viral social media campaigns and federal investigations. The Youngstown Standard became shorthand for zero-tolerance approaches to workplace discrimination. Emma's story resonated particularly strongly with working mothers across America, many of whom had faced similar struggles balancing family responsibilities with employer demands. Her transformation from a crying maintenance worker to a respected assistant manager became a symbol of what was possible when employees were given fair opportunities to succeed. Sophia's successful surgery and recovery became a powerful reminder of what was at stake when employers manipulated benefits and work schedules. Medical bills that could have bankrupted a family were instead covered by a company that chose to do the right thing, creating a ripple effect of loyalty and positive publicity that money couldn't buy. Jonathan's decision to personally cover Sophia's medical expenses wasn't just an act of compassion. It was a strategic investment in the kind of corporate culture that attracted the best employees and most loyal customers. The story of a CEO who cared more about a child's health than quarterly profits became a powerful recruiting tool and marketing message. The federal civil rights investigation that followed Derek's arrest uncovered evidence of discrimination at several other retail chains, leading to an industry-wide reckoning with systemic bias in hiring, scheduling, and promotion practices. The Department of Justice used the Youngstown case as a model for how to investigate and prosecute workplace discrimination, leading to dozens of similar cases across the country. Derek Collins became a cautionary tale taught in business schools and management training programs. His spectacular fall from retail manager to federal prisoner illustrated the personal and professional consequences of allowing bias to drive business decisions. His name became synonymous with the kind of toxic leadership that destroys both companies and communities. But perhaps the most important legacy of the Youngstown incident was the message it sent to employees everywhere, that their dignity mattered, that discrimination would not be tolerated, and that sometimes the most powerful person in the room really is on their side. Emma Reyes framed a newspaper clipping about Derek's sentencing and hung it in her office as a reminder that justice, while sometimes delayed, is never denied to those who have the courage to speak truth to power. Next to it, she hung a photo of Sophia on her first day back to school after her successful surgery, a reminder of why the fight for workplace dignity is always worth it. Jonathan Blake kept a photo from his Youngstown visit on his desk at corporate headquarters. It showed him standing with Emma and the other employees who had suffered under Derek's regime, all of them smiling with the relief and joy of people who had finally been heard. The photo served as a daily reminder of why he'd chosen to build a company that measured success not just in profits, but in the dignity and respect with which it treated every human being who walked through its doors. In the end, Derek Collins learned that power built on discrimination is not power at all. It's just borrowed time before justice comes calling. And when justice finally arrived in Youngstown, Ohio, it came with the full force of moral authority and the absolute commitment to ensure that no employee would ever again have to choose between their dignity and their livelihood. The story of the Youngstown Blake and Company became more than just a tale of corporate accountability. It became a testament to the idea that America at its best is a place where doing the right thing is not just morally correct, but practically smart. Where leaders who use their power to protect rather than exploit create lasting value for everyone. And where the simple act of listening to someone who is crying in a bathroom can change not just their life, but the lives of countless others. Derek Collins is scheduled for release from federal prison in 15 months. He will emerge into a world where his name is permanently associated with workplace discrimination and civil rights violations. He will find that the retail industry has largely blacklisted him, and that his actions in Youngstown have made him unemployable in any position of authority over other people. Emma Reyes, meanwhile, has been promoted to regional manager, overseeing 12 Blake and Company locations across Ohio and Michigan. She speaks regularly at company conferences about creating inclusive workplaces and identifying discrimination before it becomes systematic. Her daughter, Sophia, is now a healthy 12-year-old who dreams of becoming a doctor so she can help other children with heart conditions. Jonathan Blake continues to lead Blake and Company with the same moral clarity he demonstrated in Youngstown. The company has become the gold standard for workplace equality in the retail industry, attracting top talent and loyal customers who value its commitment to human dignity. The Youngstown Blake and Company store is now one of the company's most profitable locations, with the highest employee satisfaction scores in the chain. A plaque in the employee break room reads, "In memory of those who suffered in silence, and in honor of those who found the courage to speak truth to power. Justice delayed is not justice denied." And in a small office behind the customer service counter, the same office where Derek Collins once terrorized employees, Emma Reyes now mentors new managers on the principles of ethical leadership and inclusive management. The space that was once a symbol of oppression has been transformed into a beacon of hope and opportunity. The lesson of Youngstown echoes through corporate boardrooms and employee break rooms across America, that in a just society, those with power have an obligation to protect those without it. That discrimination is not just morally wrong, but economically stupid. And that sometimes the most important decision a leader can make is to listen to someone who is crying alone in a bathroom and then do everything in their power to ensure that no one ever has to cry alone again.